Hawk Beyond 2014, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And November 20th, 2011 marks 14 years ago that history was made at Survivor Series when CM Punk defeated Alberto Del Rio to become the WWE Champion, thus kicking off one of the longest championship reigns in history and holding the title for a total of 434 days. And for today's special edition, I am going to be discussing the success and failures of CM Punk's WWE Championship run from November 2011 to January 2013. So, when conversations come up about the longest reigning WWE champion of all time, these days it would usually be either Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns in particular, who held the title for a total of 300 days from August 2020 to April 2024. But before Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes would go on to have their long title reigns years later, there was one other person who held the WWE title for a very lengthy time, and that was, of course, CM Punk. Now, CM Punk, as I mentioned already, held the WWE title for a total of 434 days, and his title reign, for the most part, was very successful, but it wasn't perfect, through no fault of his, of course. It was an interesting ride, to say the very least, because CM Punk was booked very differently to past champions. Now, obviously, you think back to Stone Cold's time at the top. Stone Cold always closed out the show, whether he was champion or not. In fact, you will probably find all of Stone Cold's title reigns, he usually always closed out the show in some shape or form. With CM Punk, on the other hand, that wasn't always the case. Now, CM Punk would go out and usually have the best match of the show, but unfortunately, CM Punk never closed the show unless he was facing a top name like John Cena or The Rock, for example. So, this long title reign came about after it ended. CM Punk dropped the WWE title to Alberto Del Rio at SummerSlam 2011 when Kevin Nash came in, powerbombed Punk, and Alberto Del Rio cashed in to win the title. After Punk went into this weird feud with Triple H, who pretty much murdered his momentum, Triple H went back into retirement, and Punk lost a lot of the momentum that he had after he dropped his legendary pipe bomb. So, fast forward to Survivor Series 2011, Punk got his redemption. He defeated Alberto Del Rio and became WWE Champion. Now, I personally feel that it was a weird situation around that time because it was almost like Punk started off really strong. He was red hot. And then someone came along, yes, Triple H, I'm looking at you, and said, nope, not today. Put him out with a fire extinguisher and left. So Punk essentially had to start all over again. But thankfully, he was able to pick himself back up very quickly and move on. But as I said, Punk's title reign, although very memorable, he never really closed out the show. In fact, there was a show after Survivor Series, which was TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, and it was the first pay per view not to feature John Cena. And CM Punk closed out the show. He retained the WWE title in an excellent triple threat TLC match against The Miz and Alberto Del Rio. So that kind of said to me that Punk can close out the show. but for whatever reason, he never did. And as far as I was concerned, the very fact that Cena wasn't on the card felt fresh because Cena had been on every pay per view by that point. So just to have him not on there as a one off was different, and it was refreshing to see, you know, a title match that didn't feature Cena. And Punk, to his credit, did a great job. He put on a great match, and I enjoyed it. It was a very good pay per view for the most part. Not one of the best, but I quite enjoyed it for what it was. So fast forward to Royal Rumble 2012, and we got CM Punk versus Dolph Ziggler. A very good match, a very good wrestling match. Now, obviously, the Royal Rumble match usually, traditionally, closes out the show, so I don't really expect Punk to close out the show. I know sometimes in the Attitude Era we did have the title close out the show after the Royal Rumble match, but traditionally, for the most part, the Rumble match usually closes out the show. So as we move along into 2012, we would see Punk would defend the title, but as always, he never closed the show. So he retained the WWE title in an Elimination Chamber. He defended it against The Miz, Chris Jericho, Kofi Kingston, Dolph Ziggler, and R-Truth. Not bad little list of names here. Now, he would go into an excellent feud against Chris Jericho, which I thought was one of his best feuds during that title run. But once again, as always, Punk never closed the show. I thought they had a great match at WrestleMania 28. I mean, yeah, they had to follow Undertaker versus Triple H Hell in a Cell match, which quite frankly was going to be damn near impossible. But from a wrestling point of view, from a wrestling match point of view, I thought Chris Jericho versus I thought Chris Jericho versus CM Punk had a tremendous wrestling match. Okay, it wasn't as epic as Hunter and Taker's, but it was probably technically the better match. But unfortunately for CM Punk and Chris Jericho, their match didn't close out the show. The main event was The Rock versus John Cena, once in a lifetime. Ha! Yeah, right. Anyway, but this is where the failures are already coming into play because CM Punk versus Chris Jericho for the WWE title, for me, that should have closed the show. I'm going to go back in time to 2002. Now, everyone remembers The Rock versus Hulk Hogan, Icon versus Icon, one of the biggest matches ever at WrestleMania. And they completely stole the show. They stole the energy from the crowd. The entire Canadian audience was out of gas. Now, Triple H versus Chris Jericho. See, there's a little pattern here already. They had to follow that match. It was the main event. So you see my point now. The title closed the show. Now, a lot of people have said that Rock versus Hogan should have closed out the show. It was the bigger match. It probably was the bigger match. It was built up to be the bigger match. But wrestling purists have always said, no, the title should close the show. It's tradition. Yeah, traditionally, the title does close the show. It's WrestleMania. Should Rock and Hogan gone last? It's a subjective thing, maybe, but that can be a whole other conversation for another time. But you see, with CM Punk's title run, it's not like, okay, he closed out the show the last two pay-per-views. You can let this one off. No, Punk had not closed the show since TLC 2011 in December. Look at it. It's ridiculous, but I don't make the decisions here. So CM Punk versus Chris Jericho was middle of the card, but again, it didn't close the show. So fast forward to Extreme Rules 2012, and CM Punk defended his WWE title in a rematch against Chris Jericho, this time in a Chicago street fight, which was really good. But unfortunately, once again, CM Punk's match for the title didn't close the show. Brock Lesnar versus John Cena closed the show. This was Brock Lesnar's first match since coming back to WWE, and it was the main event. So now that Punk is already the WWE champion, once again, he has yet to close out the show since December 2011. So by this point, CM Punk was putting out really good matches and successfully retaining his title, but he wasn't closing the show. So you can imagine you're a fan, you're sitting there thinking, I thought the champion always traditionally the show. Yes, they do, but the booking for CM Punk's title reign was very suspect, to say the very least. So we move to the next pay per view, which was Over the Limit, where CM Punk defended his WWE title against Daniel Bryan, which for me was the best match of the whole show, as far as I'm concerned. It was a really good wrestling match. Daniel Bryan and CM Punk put on a WrestleMania quality clinic, and guess what the main event was for that pay per view? It wasn't Punk and Bryan. No, it was John Laurinaitis versus John Cena. I mean, how stupid can you get? Daniel Bryan versus CM Punk, one of the best matches of the year, probably the best match of that pay per view. And you don't let them close the show. You're letting John Laurinaitis and John Cena close the show. My God. So I've watched all of Punk's title run, and I was getting frustrated. My attitude was, what the hell? What's going on here? Why are we having this? What's going on? Why are we not letting this guy close out the show? Yes, I get it. John Cena is the bigger name. He's the big star. He's the face of the company. I get that. But Punk is the champion. His match was in the middle. Wasn't even like it was second to last. So I can see where fans are coming from about, well, he's the champion, but he's not closing out the show. I mean, what the hell's going on here? So we move on to No Way Out 2012. Punk successfully retained his WWE title in a triple threat match against Kane and Daniel Bryan. And no, of course he didn't close out the show. Whatever gave you that idea? It was John Cena and The Big Show in a steel cage match. Just getting beyond ridiculous. Something had to give, something had to change. So fast forward to Money in the Bank 2012. CM Punk defeated Daniel Bryan to retain the WWE title in another great match, and of course, to no one's surprise, he did not close out the show. John Cena did. He defeated Big Show, Chris Jericho, Kane, and The Miz to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, thus securing himself a championship match of his choosing. and he could cash in at any opportunity. So by now, Punk has been champion since November 2011, and apart from TLC 2011, CM Punk has not closed out the show. This was getting really stupid now. So, fast forward to Raw 1000, which was on the July 23rd, 2012. He turned heel and attacked The Rock, laying him out with a brutal clothesline, much to the shock of everyone. So, this is where the WWE title reign really started to get more interesting now because, as I said, throughout the first half of Punk's title reign, he was portrayed as a babyface. And don't get me wrong, he's a great babyface. You know, the whole anti authority thing is great. But for me, Punk is where he's at his best, is when he's a heel. So, Punk turning heel was what was needed. He needed freshening up because CM Punk as a heel champion is far more entertaining than CM Punk babyface champion. So the following week, CM Punk came out and delivered a great promo explaining why he did what he did to The Rock. And his explanation was quite straightforward. It wasn't the typical because of you people. His reason was that, well, I was overlooked. Rock ignored me. You do not ignore the WWE champion. And he took exception to the fact that Rock match without actually earning it. Oh, trust me, Punk. We all took exception to that, not just you. So Punk was now the WWE champion as a heel. Business, as JR would say, had picked up. So we move forward to SummerSlam 2012. Punk actually didn't get to close the show this time. He was in the middle of the card. It was actually Brock Lesnar versus Triple H. So Punk retained the WWE title in a triple threat match against the Big Show and John Cena. But he did move up a little bit, so he wasn't in the middle of the card anymore. He was like second to last. But again, he still didn't close the show. Oh boy. But the idea that Punk was a heel champion was much more appealing. So again, his title reign here, no fault of his. It's just kind of more or less the same opponents, but his better matches I thought were against Daniel Bryan and Chris Jericho. I thought they were much better matches, but again, it's not closing the show. However, we do come to Night of Champions 2012, and this time CM Punk defends the WWE title against John Cena, and he finally closes the show. My God, at last. But it ended in a draw. But this time, we have an extra added ingredient to CM Punk's title reign. Paul Heyman is now with him. Anybody who knows he can make anyone look good. He can make guys feel like a big deal and make them feel legit. And Punk with CM and Paul Heyman together was magic. Punk's a great talker anyway, so is Paul Heyman. But you put the two together, it's just legendary. Two of the best talkers on the same page as heels. Can't beat that. That's a combination you can't beat as far as I'm concerned. And Punk really needs anyone to do his talking. But having Paul Heyman on your side doesn't hurt. In fact, it enhances Punk as a heel. So fast forward, now we're heading to Cell and we have a different opponent and CM Punk is closing the show. And he defeats Ryback in a Hell in a Cell match to retain the WWE title. And he ended Ryback's undefeated streak. Good. Goldberg ripoff. So By this point now, CM Punk has been WWE champion for 1 year. So he won the title at Survivor Series 2011, and now here we are, Survivor Series 2012, and he's been the champion for 1 year. So pretty impressive title reign, but unfortunately, not all of those matches, none of those matches closed out the show through no fault of Punk. So Survivor Series 2012 was CM Punk defending his WWE title against John Cena and Ryback. And this match was pretty good from what I remembered, but it's more known for the debut of Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins, who would go on to be known as The Shield, one of the greatest and most important factions over the last decade. And this is where things started to get interesting. It looked like we were going to see a new faction in the making with CM Punk, Paul Heyman, and The Shield. Where Brock Lesnar would fit into it was very intriguing, and everyone was denying, no, we are not together, we are not working with each other. The Shield were adamant that we're not hired guns for Punk, we're just seeing what we feel is injustice and just righting the wrongs. Punk and Heyman denied that they're not working for us, they're not on our payroll. We know nothing about it. So it was interesting to see that for a little while. But I thought this is where Punk's title reign was really starting to get interesting because, as I said, John Cena's pretty much had Punk's spotlight, even though he's not had the title, but he's just there in the main events. Punk's in the middle or second to last. He never really got to close the show, but now we're starting to see the show. So Punk obviously wasn't part of TLC 2012 as he was injured. And this brings us to the Royal Rumble 2013 pay per view where Punk defended his WWE title against The Rock. And by this point, CM Punk had held the title now heading into 2013 for 434 days. And that was what all this second half of Punk's heel run as champion, how many days he's been champion. And Rock ended Punk's title run, thus bringing to end longest title reigns in the modern era. But Punk has nothing to be ashamed of. He put out excellent matches. He put in some great work, some great promos. But I felt his second half of that run as a heel was so much better. I thought the babyface run as a champion was okay, but I don't think it should have gone on for that long. He was starting to get a bit stale. But Punk, being the smart guy that he is, he knows when to change it up. And turning heel, attacking The Rock, was a good move, in my opinion. So in terms of the success and failures of CM Punk's WWE title run from 2011 to 13, there were some failures in there, but that wasn't because of Punk. That was more on the booking side of things. But by and large, I would say it was a complete success. I thought he had a really good title run. I thought the second half of the title run was much better when he hooked up with Paul Heyman and he turned heel and he had the Shield in the background as well. I thought that was the better half of the title run. I thought the first half, although probably had better matches, at the same time, yeah, there were a couple of little dodgy bits. His matches against Bryan and Jericho were tremendous, but they didn't close the show. So that's the only takeaway really from the title run. He never really got to main event the shows unless he was facing Cena or if Cena was injured. So that kind of annoyed me a bit. But overall, the title run was very successful, in my opinion. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up, in my opinion. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What did you guys think of CM Punk's WWE title run from 2011 to 2013? Did you enjoy it? Which half of the title run did you like more? his babyface run as champion or his heel run as champion? And what were your favourite matches? Was it WrestleMania 28 against Chris Jericho, Over the Limit against Daniel Bryan, Night of Champions against John Cena, Hell in a Cell against Ryback, or the triple threat match against John Cena and Ryback? And what was your favourite moments from CM Punk's title reign? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.